Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are going to start a new chapter from annual syllabus, and I'm continuing the same subject, history. So according to syllabus, your next chapter is chapter number 9, women, caste, and reform. So in this chapter, it's all about Indian society before independence era, during colonial era, what was there in Indian society? What kind of customs were there? Traditions, culture of the Indian society, situation of especially women, and the caste system in India, as well as the reformation in the Indian society, we are going to discuss in this chapter. So let's begin this chapter. Uh, have you ever thought of how children lived about 200 years ago? The basic idea definitely will come in your mind that they didn't have cell phone, they didn't have internet, they didn't have computer, they didn't have games. How did they live? Right? That is the second matter. Most important, their position in the society, and especially for girls. How they were they treated by their parents, by the society. So nowadays, you know that most of girls from middle class families, they go to school and often study with boys without any issue, without any problem, right? On growing up, many of them go college and universities as well. As we observe our society, even they take higher study, they become doctors, engineers, they work in offices, teachers, lawyers. Those things are now common, and that is pretty good. Nowadays, we can say that women are almost parallel to men. There is not a vast difference. Yes, still some people think lower, but condition is somehow better, right? Nowadays, we can see that women can work, they can have their job. They have to be adult before they are legally married. No one forced them to marry, right? And they can choose their own partner for marriage, anyone they like. Those are the rights, legal rights. And women can marry from any caste, any society, any community. One more thing, widows can remarry as well. If they want to remarry, they are allowed to remarry. All women, like all men, they can vote, they can stand for education. These rights are not actually enjoyed by all, because poor people have little or no access to education, and many families, women cannot choose their husband. In spite of all those changes, today there are also primitive society. I would like to, I'm using word for that. That primitive society, their thinking is still lower, primitive, old, that's what we call. 200 years ago, things were very different. Most children were married off at early age, that's what we call child marriage. They were married at an early age, both Hindu and Muslim. Men could marry more than one wife. They had different, multiple wives. In some parts of the country, widows were praised if they choose that by burning themselves on funeral pyre of their husband. Women who died in this manner, some willingly died, some forcefully, and they were called sati, sati, meaning virtuous women. Sati means virtuous women. Women's right to property also restricted. Nowadays, women can have property, but at that time, women's right to property were restricted. Besides, most women had virtually no access to education. Virtually, they didn't have access to education. Education's, education for boys only. In many parts of the country, people believed that if if a women get education, she would become a widow. So risk on her as well as risk on her husband too. Right. So those are the beliefs, the customs of the Indian society. More differences between men and women were not only once in the society. It wasn't only issue about the women, but as the in the heading of the chapter, women, caste and reform, caste system. The next is caste system. In most religion, in even most region, people were divided along lines of caste. There were there was a system, caste system, and different levels of the system. They were divided into different groups. On the top, there were Brahmins, means priests, teachers and priests were in Brahmins. Second, Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas were they were either like king or they were courtiers of king. Kshatriyas, warriors, warriors also in Kshatriyas, and basically warriors means Kshatriyas as well as Brahmin, they consider themselves as upper castes. Others, such as traders and moneylenders, often they were referred as Vaishyas, traders, moneylenders, merchants. They were placed after them. They were somehow like neutral, not upper caste, at least not lower caste, neutral. Middle. Then after, then came peasants, laborers, sweepers, cleaners, artisans, craft persons, potters, cobblers. Situation of those people were worst because those people were considered as Shudras. At the lowest rung were those who labored to keep cities and villages clean or work at jobs for upper class. Those people were considered polluting. So they were basically called untouchable because touching of those people, even touching, was not allowed. The upper castes also treated many of those groups as bottom, as untouchable. They were not allowed to enter temple. Temple also. Entering in temple was forbidden for them. Draw water from the well used by upper caste people. Well for fetching water. They didn't have pipeline system that time. So draw water from well was forbidden too. Even entering in the upper caste area was also forbidden for untouchable. So they were seen as inferior human being. Even in simple word, they were considered lower than animal. People do not treat animal like them. Those untouchable, those lower caste people treated by upper caste people in that much worse way. But over the 19th and 20th century, many of these norms and perceptions slowly changed. Reformations were occurred. How did those reformations occur? Who played important role in it? Let's learn about it. So let's talk about working towards change. From early 19th century, you find debates and discussion about social customs and practices taking on new character. One important reason for this was development of new forms and communication. Communication nowadays we have a very easy method, a very cheaper method for communication, smartphone. But that time, before they communicated through manuscripts written on hard surface. We have seen on pages, paper, bark of trees, right? So they wrote their ideas and everything on manuscripts. For first time, books, newspaper, magazines, leaflets, and pamphlets were printed because printed machines were invented and came up in India as well. More, these were far cheaper and far more accessible than manuscripts. Therefore, ordinary people could read this. Those philosophers spread their ideas through their newspapers, articles, to leaflets, through magazines. More, all kinds of issues, social, political, economical, and religious, could now be debated and discussed by men. And sometimes even women also came up for raising such issues. Especially such kind of situation were in cities. This discussion could reach out to a wider public and could become linked to movement for social change, a new movement towards changes, a new movement for a better society. These debates were often initiated by Indian reformers and reform groups. Reform. Those who wanted to form again, those who wanted to change society. So here, social reformers, and there were individual social reformers as well as group of social reformers. So one such reformer was well known Raja Ram Mohan Roy from 1772 to 1833. He founded a reform association known as Brahmo Sabha, later known as Brahmo Samaj, a group of people, because one sole hand didn't have power to do much. So he formed a society, a group of people, a group of reformers, those who wanted to make change in the society. Brahmo Samaj or Brahmo Sabha, founded by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Remember this. So it was founded in Calcutta, present-day Kolkata. People such as Ram Mohan Roy was described as reformers because they felt that changes were necessary in society and unjust practices needed to be done away with. Many people realized this, especially those who were educated. They realized that those customs, those traditions like sati, forbidden widow remarriage, caste system, this place of women in the society. So those systems of society were full of unjust, was inappropriate for the people. So they thought that the best way to ensure such changes was by persuading people to give up old practices and adopt new way of life. Those are reformation they wanted. Ram Mohan Roy was need to spread the knowledge of Western education. He believed in Western education. He didn't want that traditional Indian. Yeah, he didn't deny, but he insists on Western education. And he wanted to bring greater freedom and equality for women, similar like in the Western society. He wrote about the way women forced to bear the burden of domestic work. He realized women's issue. He found that different problems faced by women, like burden of domestic work, 1 2 women and family of 10 20 people, confined to home and in the kitchen. They were not allowed to leave their kitchen. Forget about home, sometimes they were not allowed to enter in the sitting area of house, drawing room, what we call sitting room. And they were not allowed to move out and become educated. Going out from home, it was far away. So, and men, they were free. They were allowed to go wherever they wanted to go. They were allowed to hold meetings, gathering at Nukkad, at different places in the village, in cities. Women were not allowed. So such situation of women were needed to be changed. And Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he played important role in it. So changing lives of women, we'll discuss in upcoming video. Stay tuned. Thank you so much.